Before we start, I want to tell you about a new nourishing offering. To nurture our gorgeous #Impact community, I am running monthly community sharing circles. In these circles, we meet for an hour virtually to journal and reflect together. It always starts with a short teaching that I put together to support you on your impact-making journey. The last few times we talked about priority setting, self-belief, creativity, and how to deal with setbacks. Reach out to me at hello@impact.com and I will send you the link to join. This offering is free and for everyone that cares about making a positive impact in the world. And if you are listening here, I'm pretty sure you're one of them. You might also be surprised bumping in some of our former guests and hosts, and it's just this lovely, lovely, nourishing place that I just want to share with you. Just send me an email to hello@impact.com. Let me know from where in the world you'll join us, and I will put you on the invitation list. I can't wait to see you there. How can we build communities around the impact we want to make in the world? How do we get people engaged and excited to support our missions when everyone is so busy already? How do we get others to care? This season will bring you people that decide to look closer. They look where others have turned away. They are building communities to make a positive impact. I am Regina Larco, and this is #Impact, a podcast about stuff that matters. Today, I'm sitting down with Gurtin, Chief Executive Officer of PathFinders. PathFinders' mission is to ensure the most vulnerable and unsupported children in Hong Kong are protected and respected, and their migrant mothers are empowered to find a path to a brighter future. Catherine has worked on child rights and protection across Asia for more than a decade and is passionate about connecting and bringing people together in pursuit of solutions and common goals. Catherine is also a wife and a mother of 2. In Hong Kong, she is only able to work thanks to the incredible support of a migrant domestic worker who is also a working mom. Catherine, I've been meaning to do this for many years, actually. Welcome, Catherine. Finally, we get to have this conversation.
Thank you so much, Regina. Lovely to be here.
For our listeners, a few years back, actually, you sent a lovely voice note that we included in a former episode of #Impact, where you shared a bit more about your work. And that's why I also say I'm just so glad we finally dive into it more deeply. And we also had a chance to do a Instagram live session in February 2022. I scrolled all the way back on my Insta because I wanted to re-listen to the conversation, because that time it's been really a crisis moment that was unfolding for many migrant domestic workers that suddenly found themselves homeless at that time because of the pandemic. And, now we meet again 2 years later, many more crises that you have overcome, much more impact that you've made, awards won, congratulations.
Thank you.
What has your work with Pathfinders taught you about being human, Catherine?
Goodness, it's taught me so much. I think one of the most fundamental things it's taught me is that you just have to take care of each other. You don't know when you might find yourself in a situation, in a moment of crisis, where you don't have the support and care of people around you. And really, it's the community that you need to lean on in these times to sort of help you through. And no person is an island. And really, in the greatest moments of challenge, that's when you need to be pulling people, close to you, and asking for help. So I think that's probably the greatest thing that it's taught me. Also, this sense of marginalization and how easy it is to find yourself in a community that's marginalized, and how important it is to sort of reach your hands out to really give this sense of inclusion to everyone in the community and society around you, because everyone plays a role. In Hong Kong, migrant domestic workers actually enable many working mums like myself to be able to work and be a dual income household. The situation in Hong Kong is fairly unique in that, we don't really have strong sort of support or care systems for children or the elderly. And as a consequence, we rely as households really significantly on the support and care of migrant domestic workers to sort of bridge that gap and enable us to work ourselves. I mean, the statistics are quite startling. We have 340,000 domestic workers in Hong Kong as of today, 2024. It might have gone up a little bit more recently. But we need 600,000 by 2047 to care for an aging population. So, we're about to sort of, really quite significantly increase our reliance on this population. And, 90% of these women are women of childbearing age. They come from communities where they don't have comprehensive sexual health education, very conservative communities like the Philippines and Indonesia. And they find themselves from small communities landing in a country like, or a region, administrative region like Hong Kong. And they're very lonely and they're very vulnerable. And particularly, in Hong Kong, they only have one day off a week, either a Saturday or a Sunday. And so what we often find at Pathfinders is that there are men that will approach them in the parks on their day off and, shower them with promises of marriage and long-term relationships, and bringing them to Hong Kong as their wives, and telling them that if they have children in Hong Kong, the child will automatically become a Hong Kong permanent resident, which is not true. Only to get pregnant and the man no longer to be in the picture, in the sense of crisis. So, there's a real reliance on this group of ladies, but they're not considered to be local Hong Kongers. They're very much considered to be foreigners. We refer to them as migrant domestic workers. Actually, other terminology and terminology used by the government is foreign domestic helpers. And so for us, that sense of rebranding that migrant domestic worker term is really important, because they are migrants, like I'm a migrant. They come here for the betterment of their families and for more opportunity, as did I. They do help in a domestic sense, so that makes sense. But they're workers. They're people who are employed. They're not just here to help. They perform a service, and as such should be treated with the same rights and expectations of any employer. And in Hong Kong, the situation is really interesting, because like all working women in Hong Kong, a migrant domestic worker is entitled to maternity leave. But often, because their rights aren't realized or respected, or employers don't really understand the ins and outs of the contract and the obligations of their contract, they don't realize that. And so that's where Pathfinders often has to step in, because, a woman becomes pregnant. She doesn't realize she has maternity rights. The employer may not. She may lose her job. Most of the pregnancies we see are unplanned. The woman is here to work. So the employer is shocked because she's here to work on a 2-year contract. The woman often is shocked herself because she wasn't expecting to get pregnant, and certainly doesn't feel very empowered to tell her family, because she's sending money home to extended family members, and she's the breadwinner. So the whole setup, the whole system has got so many challenges associated with it. But often with challenge comes opportunity, and so I think that's where we really we really thrive as an organization, and not just trying to sort of step in and serve when there's a crisis, and intervene with services like shelter or healthcare, education, supplies, but really over the last sort of 5 years to think more about, well, how can we prevent the crisis? And then, what is the opportunity systemically and with the systems to influence change, and really to support the employer in this circumstance? Because if the worker can maintain her employment contract and her maternity leave is honoured, then she can access all the public services available in Hong Kong for the safety and care of her child. And actually, Pathfinders wouldn't be needed. I think that's the real opportunity. Anyone working in the NGO sector will tell you that the real impact is to do themselves out of a job. You want to take the issues that you're serving today and not be needed in the same way tomorrow. So so I think I rambled a little bit. I'm not sure I answered your question, but it's a really it can be a very difficult, very challenging environment to work in, because of the deprivation and the vulnerabilities that we see.
Yeah, I think a lot of our listeners and sending a shout out to a beautiful Hong Kong community that is listening right now. It is something that they can really relate with and resonate with. Having lived in Hong Kong myself for 8 years and having been so grateful of our migrant domestic workers' support during the time when we started having a family, there is something to me as a human that is just incredibly humbling about what you just shared when it comes to, when I look at me becoming a new mom, in that setting of where another working mom, my lovely migrant domestic worker, can I give a shout out to our lovely Auntie Mani, if she's listening to this, who has been so, especially at a time when we were away from our family, right, as migrants ourselves, as expats, where her loving support and help was so crucial to us even being able to transition into becoming a new parent. But also for me then, after a while, returning back to work. Because as you said, there wouldn't have been any places where I could have, had that child care, and without having family that could have maybe stepped in and helped, it wouldn't have worked, right? So to me, on a personal level, I feel such a gratitude towards this community of mostly it is women, right? It's it's a high percentage of it being women that are coming into people's homes to support, and it's always been so important to me to support work like yours and other organizations that are supporting migrant domestic workers to become empowered. But the whole, I think and that's why I start rambling, of what brings another layer into this conversation of what you do then as well, is when it comes to these children that are now being born into a situation where tell us a bit more about this situation. when a child is born to a migrant domestic worker in Hong Kong, how do they fit in the system? Do they at all? What kind of protection do they have, if any?
And it's really interesting when you look at the work that our caseworkers do. They're exceptional and very talented and very experienced, because they have to understand so much complexity within the system in Hong Kong. Because it's very hard for me to give you a typical example of a situation that we may see in terms of crisis, because there are so many different moments that a mother can fall into crisis. So, for example, I mentioned that often employers, and less so these days actually, which is a huge tribute to the work that Pathfinders has done now over 15 years. We don't see so many illegal terminations of contracts. Quite often, even before the migrant worker has told the employer that she's pregnant, she goes through a level of crisis herself. In those situations, she may make her own decision to do things like an illegal termination of her pregnancy. That's a huge risk to her and to the unborn child. If she sort of we've seen situations where the mothers have concealed their pregnancies and not told their employer. So there was one case that we had where the worker called their employer, who was out of the house, I think it was on a weekend, and said that she needed to go to the hospital because she was in labour. And her employer didn't know that she was pregnant. She just thought she'd be putting on a little bit of weight. Obviously the pregnancy was quite so small. And the employer returned home to find that the worker had gone into labour and delivered in the employer's home. But she'd bled out. And so what had happened was the worker was then the employer found the worker in a coma, and the baby was deceased. Very, very sadly and unfortunately. You have other situations where there's a general fear and anxiety of a worker telling their employer that they're pregnant because they don't know how they're going to react. And most employers are quite shocked. And if I put myself into an employer's shoes, if my auntie told me that she was pregnant, I'd be thrilled for her if it was something that I knew that she wanted. If it was the case of a sort of a love scam or someone that was no longer in the picture, I'd be very worried and concerned for her and the child. But also, you do think then about yourself and your own situation. And, for working mums like me, or women with elderly parents, because often the caring responsibilities falls to us as women, your mind would be racing with, well, what am I going to do when you're on maternity leave for 14 weeks? I can't take 14 weeks off work. There's all, we've got a dear colleague at Pathfinders, and his mum is bedridden. She needs to be tube fed, etc. And his auntie needed to go back to Indonesia at very short notice, but she needed to be gone for a month. And he was like, for a couple of weeks, I could make it work, but for a month, it's very, very difficult. So, again, for the employer, when they're confronted with a pregnancy, it's enormously challenging. And I think that's why we've tried to move beyond crisis and dealing with, the unique needs of mothers, whether they're still employed or they've overstayed, or the father's in the picture or not in the picture. Is the father a Hong Kong ID card holder? In which case, if he's still in the picture, we could potentially get a sort of ID for the child. But if he's not, there's just so many different complexities. But yeah, we're trying so hard to move beyond the crisis, because many of these women, as I mentioned, don't have comprehensive sexual health, reproductive health knowledge. There's an education gap. There's a service gap. Actually, the Family Planning Association is closed on a Sunday. It's the only day off for many workers. And there's an empowerment gap. And, there is a power dynamic between the employer and the worker. And so often the worker can't assert herself or her rights. So with the sort of prevention piece, for us, it's about really empowering the community as community leaders. And really excited that our ambassadors program that we launched in mid-2019, at the height of the social unrest in Hong Kong, and that program has now professionally trained almost 300 migrant domestic workers as community leaders that can be going into the community and educating their peers on the importance of preventing unplanned pregnancies, recognizing love scams, knowing your rights. But we need to go further because, many employers, they want to do the right thing. But how do I make that work as an employer? As I mentioned, I can't take 14 weeks off work. I'm relying on the help. And so for us, it's really then trying to look at things like, what sort of systemic changes do we need to be putting in place? Do we need to be looking at sort of a low cost insurance product that would pay out 4/5 of the worker's salary while she's on maternity leave? Do we need to be looking at sort of short-term support or cover? Is there an agency, an ethical employment agency that we could work with that could employ workers on a 2-year contract, but then place them onto short-term 3-4 month assignments to cover maternity leave or sick leave or any type of long-term leave? And the live-in rule is very unclear in Hong Kong as to whether, if your worker is pregnant and on any kind of leave, whether she has to live in your home or you have permission for her to live out. Because, as you know, in Hong Kong, it's a very interesting dynamic. You have to have someone live in your home with you, which for many employers and workers is very challenging because it's a very intimate relationship. And when something goes wrong, like pregnancy or debt issues, and the team at Enrich do an incredible job of trying to sort of help with financial literacy, but many of these ladies also don't understand when they go to a loan shark and they give their passport as collateral, what that means and the impact on the employer. So it's a very there's lots of opportunity for change and impact. I think it's a good way of putting it.
And I guess any impact topic is full of complexities and challenges where you are constantly almost like on alert, I would want to say. Like, you never know what you're going to get, right? On any kind of working day, you get to your desk and like, it's so... As you said, every case is so unique and it's such a team effort to cater to these different kind of situations. It makes me think of actually a quote I read from you. Now I don't even know where I found that. Maybe you'll recognize it. So these are your words that I found on, maybe it was on your socials. But I thought that was actually beautiful. You said, it's so true. You don't know what your limits are until you put them to the test. It's only when you step outside of your comfort zone that you realize you have so much more courage and strength than you ever knew you were capable of. So
that was my LinkedIn post.
Was it the LinkedIn post?
That was,
where did I find that? That was beautiful.
That was in November 2023. So at the end of last year, I decided to take on a physical challenge. I did High Rocks, which people might not know what High Rocks is.
Right.
Yeah. But High Rocks, you basically have to run 8 1-kilometer lengths, and in between you do a series of exercises. I mean, I did it with my husband, who's a CrossFit, but I still had to do the 8 1-kilometer runs and share some of the, you do like I think it's 1,000-meter row and then a ski erg and a sledge push and burpee broad jumps, all these terrible things. And it was way outside of my comfort zone, but I challenged myself to it because the summer before I triple fractured my ankle, which resulted in 3 surgeries. The last, I had an infection that had gone into my bones, so I had to be in hospital on IV antibiotics for a week over my birthday. And so that was all very challenging. And then I started 2023 thinking, okay, we've got this. And then my husband's family live in Turkey, and his cousin died in the earthquake with her husband and children who are similar ages to ours.
I'm so sorry.
And then, we lost a friend to bowel cancer, and then I had to have a hysterectomy in the summer. And I just, over the summer break last year, I was like, okay, I just need to do something that's going to really push me. It's going to really challenge me. But that something I don't know if I could do, but that's just going to kind of make me feel really proud of myself once I've done it. And so that was the High Rocks. And that was the quote that I put there, was just that sense of, I think sometimes you just have to roll up your sleeves and just think, I can, and give things a go. And it really is in those moments when you don't know if you can do it, you want to try, that you really realize that you can do so much more than you think you're capable of. I really believe that. And another one of my favorite quotes is it's actually it was Stoicism. My great grandmother was very stoic, but it's a Marcus Aurelius quote that talks about the obstacle being the way. And you're talking about the fact that often you have these plans, and especially when you lead an organization, you sort of have strategies and plans and all these other bits and pieces. But more often than not, when the rubber hits the road, you hit a stone or something that punctures the tire pretty quickly, and you just have to pivot. And I think for me, that's been the biggest challenge, but biggest opportunity of the role, particularly at Pathfinders, because I joined in February 2019, first time CEO. It was a huge opportunity and a huge role. And nothing can quite prepare you for the overwhelming sense of responsibility for an organization, and not just for the team, but also the beneficiaries that you serve. But then we went into social unrest in the June, sort of a few months after joining. And that was like, oh my goodness, great. How are we going to manage this? And Mongkok police station was one of the hotspots for the unrest, and we're right next door to our centre. And we had pregnant mothers and children coming to the centre, day in, day out. So we had to pivot then and think about how we were going to manage it. And we got to the end of 2019 with a sort of a strategy and a sort of a direction, and thinking, this is the new normal, we've got this. And January 2020 is when COVID started to kind of unfold. And it's just, I think the only certainty is change and uncertainty. And how you handle that, I think, is instrumental in terms of the success that you will be able to realize. Because I think if you spend too much time focusing on what the issue is and how challenging it is and how hard it is, you get so wrapped up in that emotion and that energy drain that you don't necessarily throw the energy into how do we move it forward. And I think for me, the biggest learning of all those challenges is that I'd much prefer to spend my energy getting out of the situation than waste my energy and drain my energy thinking too much about where we are and why we're there. I think there are times for reflection, but when sorry, excuse my French, when the shit hits the fan, you've got to keep moving forward. I think the other thing for me is just this importance, just keep putting one foot in front of the other. You might not be able to kind of realize the vision or see clearly kind of the path, several steps down the way, but just keep moving forward, because it is what it is, and you've just got to get on with it. Hong Kong's been a wonderful but very challenging place to live the last 4 or 5 years. But our community, in terms of migrant workers, have been disproportionately impacted in terms of on so many fronts. not least during COVID. And as you know, because we had a lengthy conversation at the time in February 2022 when, COVID, the fifth wave was happening. And, they were being made homeless and unemployed when testing positive for COVID because they were expected to live in employers' homes. And the hospitals were turning them away because they were so full. And don't get me wrong, I understand if a worker is taking care of children or the elderly who couldn't be vaccinated, it's a very hard situation for the employer. But when you employ someone, when you sign that contract, you have obligations for your worker. So, as much as you would be really unhappy and really peeved if your company operated in a way that wasn't in line with how you expect them to treat you, equally so for these ladies, because you are an employer. This is your worker, this is your employee, and you have a duty of care. And beyond, these ladies being homeless and with COVID being on the streets, beyond being a humanitarian issue, that's a public health issue. So it was a very, but I think it really sort of speaks to the dynamic often in Hong Kong around this population. They don't even have places that they can go on a Sunday. They hang out in the parks, sit on sort of cardboard boxes, even when it's like, pouring with rain, because, the idea for them of spending their day off in their employer's home where they don't really often have their own personal space is they need a break. So it's, we have interestingly seen progress post-COVID. I think there was an outpouring of more empathy and understanding and respect, particularly when you considered that 40% of the population are mothers, and they weren't able to go home for 4 years to see their children. So we did see, I think, a little shift in terms of value and appreciation, because our children were home learning like many families across the globe. But when you're trying to work as a mother and facilitate home learning for your children, in the US and the UK, many very experienced senior women fell out of the workforce as a consequence. I don't think we saw the same level of fallout in Hong Kong because we have this workforce. And when I was talking about statistics earlier, one of the things I wanted to reference was a great study by Professor Adam at Hong Kong Baptist University. And his research shows that for a potential dual income household, if they don't hire a migrant worker, there would only be 42% participation of women in the workforce, working mothers in the workforce. But when you hire a migrant domestic worker, that kind of increases to over 70%. So the value that this population, this labor force brings economically, but also socially in terms of the care. And they often will, because they're supporting, will facilitate the family going on to have a second or a third child. And this is at a stage when actually we're trying to encourage people to have children because we have plummeting birth rates. So there's just so much value and contribution that this labor force, this workforce brings to Hong Kong, but it's just not front of people's minds. They're not humanized. They're just viewed as this help that will sort of get rather than these women who have hopes, dreams, aspirations that are coming to work in Hong Kong for the betterment of their families. It's very complex. But we just need to appreciate each other. And I think for us, that's why we launched our Working Mums Hong Kong campaign a few years ago, because it was kind of like, well, I'm a working mum. My auntie is a working mum too. So it's not us and them. It's kind of like this. There are things that are similar that connect us. We're humans. We have these strands of similarity, not difference.
I absolutely love that about your organization, how you are taking time to appreciate your community. Our season 6 is all about community and working mom campaign, I encourage everyone to head over to your socials as well to engage and find out how you do that, to see these stories. I understand that the Ambassador Appreciation Day, the Pathfinders Ambassador Appreciation Day, is one of your favorite days of the year on the Pathfinders calendar, and also how you as a person, Catherine, how you appreciate your team and how you as an organization live and breathe teamwork. I would say it's so heartwarming to see. Looking, from an outside perspective in, I think it's something that is so important. But is there something that you've learned, and you touched upon all these challenges that living and working in Hong Kong has brought these past couple of years? In particular, is there something you learned about motivating a team, even in the moments when it gets incredibly tough? Because I know there are a lot of impact makers listening to us now that are managing their teams across the globe. How do you do that? And are there any strategies that have helped you as a leader of this organization to keep team spirits up, even on those days where it's maybe even hard for you to show up and say, yeah, let's keep doing this?
I think there's a sense of honesty, and I think it's important when you're a leader to share actually the days when you're not feeling it, or you're also, because that sense of team is really important for people to understand that not every day is a good day. And actually, if we are working collectively and as one, to recognize that some days, some of the team just, need a little bit of a lift. But if we've got each other's backs and we support each other and we carry each other through, then we're going to be really successful more broadly. And the reality is, you bring your whole self to work. Particularly when you work for an NGO, because there is a huge amount of passion that's associated with that. But you can't feel passionate every single day. And certainly the some of the work that we do is downright depressing. So, you have to really be quite honest about where you're at and how you feel, and to feel, I guess, psychologically safe in being able to say, look, I'm just having a really crappy day, and bear with me. I'll bounce back at this point, or I need some help. And often, I think one of my biggest learnings in this position is often you look to the leader of an organization, you think they have all the answers. We don't. We're human too. And I think what I love and respect about our team is that I can say, look, I think this, but I think that based on my experience and what I see, and I go with my gut a bit, which, maybe some people have sort of judgment over that. But for me, my intuition is an important part of the decision-making process. Obviously, there's all the analytics and all the other stuff that you're supposed to do. But, I'm a strong gut person. But, when you look at the diversity of a team, what's special, I think, about Pathfinders is you have people with lots of different backgrounds, but also from lots of different places. And actually, we can come up with something so much more powerful when you draw on those individual perspectives as well. And I think it's just it's that trust, isn't it? It's the trust. It's being open. It's being honest. It's making people feel that they can share without any kind of retribution how they're feeling and what they're thinking, regardless of and being open. You have to be open. People will say things and you just think, oh, I don't agree with you, but you have to be able to say, I don't agree, but that's okay. We don't always have to agree. Let's figure it out. So yeah, it's it's a very magical group. I don't think I've walked into many organizations, and a lot of people comment, as soon as you walk through the door, you feel the energy. It's a very inspiring group of people to, well, I say lead, but work alongside, because I think that's where the teamwork comes in, when you know, people feel, and yet when I think about what's my why, I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek. But you know, when I
Me
think
too.
about,
I'm smiling.
but when I think about, you know, there's I don't think it was in his book, it might have been someone else's, but when you say, what do you want people to remember about you and what your purpose was? And for me, it's really that sense of that I rose by lifting others. And so I try to live by that within the team. But I think that's why the ambassadors program for me is so special. Because it is about creating community leaders. It is about empowering the community to speak up and use their own voice on the issues that matter to them in a way that's being heard and respected. And I think one of the biggest, I guess, moments of joy for me is when I am invited to speak at something or share something, and I go with one of our ambassadors, and I sort of give a little bit of a synopsis, but then I, you know, pass the stage to them. And so I'm going to get emotional. They are incredible. We were invited to one of the chambers. We were the beneficiary of their gala, and I had two ladies. I had Dee from Indonesia, one of our ambassadors, and Mardi from Philippines, another one of our ambassadors. There were 200 people in this gala, and they held the room. It was so impressive and so powerful. And then there was another panel that I was on, actually working with Olivia at Luna, and we were talking about period poverty. And so I sort of went to do a little bit of the PathFinders field, but I took Lorna, one of our ambassadors, with us, and she was speaking about period poverty from the perspective of a migrant domestic worker. That's so important, that sense of representation, and that being able to put a voice to the issues that affect that. And that for me is, I'm so proud of Pathfinders for having that program. It's really, it's special. And the team that delivered that program was special as well. It wouldn't be what it is without, you know, the likes of Christina, who's leading that and directing it, and she's got 20 years experience of working within the community. I mean, it's just, they're an exceptional group of people. They really are. It's such a privilege to work with them.
I wish I was sitting in that room when they shared. I was just
it gets really emotional.
Yeah. Because it's their story, right? It just makes me think, maybe a little favor I have to ask now before I let you go. But I would love for you and your team, maybe you can capture some of those next events that you go to where your ambassadors share. And just, I'm sure you have some posts of that as well, but grab me the audio as well, you know, send me the audio so that I can share it with our listeners as well, and we can do a little follow up, and I can, you know, let's get their voice heard of as well. That would be so lovely, because I just thought, lucky those people that were sitting in that room, you know.
They were so impressed. But you know, actually, the Ambassador Appreciation Day, one of the reasons it's a highlight of my year is because, again, the ambassadors come. We appreciate them, but they also sort of share little performances. The Filipino groups often sort of like to do dances. There's a mime group. You know, poetry and singing, and I mean, they're just the most talented group of people. And I think this is why, you know, for us, it's really important that they are humanized, because, you know, particularly from the Philippines, many of the ladies here have degrees, university degrees. You know, Lorna, who I mentioned earlier, she runs the Filipino Nursing Association in Hong Kong. She's a nurse, but she can earn 3 times more as a migrant domestic worker in Hong Kong than she could doing nursing in her home country. And so, again, these women need so much respect for their accomplishments and just how talented they are. It's we've got we're working with Joanna Bowers. She produced the Helper documentary.
Yeah.
She's produced a book that's been authored and illustrated by 2 migrant domestic workers called My Extra Special Auntie. We're actually going to be launching it this year around Mother's Day. But again, when we talk about that and the talents of the illustrator in illustrating that, so it just, they were an incredible group of people, but just not at all recognized to the degree that they deserve.
I'll actually put, for all our listeners, I know you wanna connect with Catherine now and follow their socials and support their mission. This is an invitation for you as well to support their cause, and you can find all that on their website. I'll put all the links in the show notes as well for you to connect with Catherine. And I'll also put that, just because you mentioned Joanna Bowers now and her beautiful documentary. Many years back, we spoke on a podcast about the making of that documentary. So I'll add that in the links there as well. And we'll update this regularly. Maybe by the time this airs, the book is launched, and we can all have a look and support that as well, and appreciate the amazing mothers we have in our lives, and the amazing aunties, the migrant domestic workers. And I would love to hear and follow up with you how everything is going for in years to come, because I know, Catherine, by listening to you, and I know all our listeners will feel that as well, that just the love and empathy and courage and passion that you bring to the table to make an impact for these women and the children of these women is astounding and beautiful, and it will go places. It already went places, and it will keep going places. And 15 plus years, what a journey, right? So congratulations to everything that you already accomplished, you and the team, and for all that's yet to come.
Yeah, no, I can promise you, if you spoke to anyone of the team, they'd be equally as passionate and as heartfelt, because it's you have to have that to do what we do. Yeah, you really
Catherine, you know it. I won't let you go before we go through the #impact quickfire round. Catherine, making an impact means
improvement in a situation or in someone's life. For me, it's really important never to look down on someone unless you're reaching out a hand to lift them up. It's about progress and just improvement.
Who inspires you in the way they build community?
There's a couple of people in Hong Kong. There are so many people in Hong Kong. I might select a man and a woman. Jeff at Impact Hong Kong and Love 21. I just think his energy and his commitment to quite different but much needed groups in Hong Kong is really, he's a real inspiration. He's always so laid back and so chilled. I find him very inspiring. And Alia at Mother's Choice. Mother's Choice do some things that are relatively similar, but with a slightly different group. And in terms of being a working mum with so many children at home, I just think she does incredible work. But yeah, there are so many. Fiona at the Women's Foundation, my peers Lucinda and Rich and Manisha at Help for Domestic Workers, Joe at Habitat for Humanity. It's hard, isn't it? It's hard to pick. It's hard to pick just one. We're all, there are so many.
Luckily, this is almost like the full lineup of #impact. Yeah, and all the people. Oh, I think we've had the voices of these people. So just keep binge listening #impact, and you will keep being inspired. And of course, Catherine, what could everyone do, our listeners, right now after they listen to this conversation? to make the world an even better place?
I think it starts at home. And if you hire a migrant domestic worker and you're in Hong Kong, please just have conversations with them, find out about them, and appreciate them. Or in your doorstep, that there are migrant domestic workers in and around us all the time. The thing that I find often makes the biggest impact is catching an eye of a worker and just saying good morning. She's not, someone that's not necessarily working with me, but just that sense of being seen means so much to them. The other Hong Kong Shifts, the team at Hong Kong Shifts does an incredible job of kind of sharing the stories of shift workers. We've sort of tried to ask them to do more in terms of doing migrant domestic workers. I know it's not quite in their bag, but similarly, migrant domestic workers have stories. So, if you're regularly coming into contact with a worker, even if she's not someone that you employ, just have a chat, find out about her. I just think it would mean so much, and it would make their day, just to feel seen. Easy. And if you're not in Hong Kong, just be kind. Hold doors for people. I know it sounds really silly. Or, if you see someone doing an act of service that's emptying the bins or something, just my most favorite picture in terms of visibility and seen and inclusion is of Barack Obama fist pumping with a guy that was emptying the bins. It doesn't matter who you are or what you do. Recognize everybody on the same level as being a human, and treat them as such.
Because all the contributions they're making, right? Everyone, it doesn't matter title or occupation or just like that on being human. Why have we lost our touch with humanness? And just look up, oh God, look, I get in a ramble now because it made me what makes me a little bit sad, but I'm ready to take on your advice and living it. It makes me a bit sad that when I do it, when I do greet people, right, on the streets of Vienna, I love doing that. Because you see them also all the time. There's one guy sweeping the pavement from the leaves. He's cleaning up. Vienna is so tidy. It's like so clean. I'm like, oh my God, because of people and amazing people like him, right?
Yeah.
And when I go in the morning with all my kids in tow, and I say good morning to him because, of course, I recognize him. But he keeps being surprised.
I know.
Did you? He does not look up because he doesn't think it's for him. And I will keep doing it because I'm like, it's for you. Take it. So I think it's sad because it's so little people actually doing it. So you wouldn't even expect it. Like the other day, it's like he turned around. He turned around and I'm like, you, good morning to you. He thinks I'm a weirdo. He's like, she keeps greeting me. Why does she keep greeting me?
Do you know what? I would almost find out his name and say hello and what his name is.
Yes, that's good.
Then, it was really interesting. I was coming back from dropping the kids at school this morning, and there's an auntie downstairs, and she's looking after a puppy called Winston. I knew the puppy's name. My kids had been talking about him, and I was like, oh, hi, Winston. And then I suddenly thought, oh my goodness, I'm greeting the dog, but I don't know her name. And it was so funny because I said to her, I'm really sorry, I'm greeting the dog, but I don't know your name. She said, oh, my name's Carol. So I was just like, hi, Carol. Hi, Winston. Because again, it's just kind of like, it just, I see, and I'm going to see her fairly regularly and just, and she feels seen. I mean, it's such a small thing to remember someone's name, but it's so important. It's so important. Yeah,
that was the missing piece to make him understand It's for you. Oh my God. I will follow up on that, Catherine. I will let you know what he will say when I will ask him for his name. I think I might cause a heart attack. You want to report me? He will probably think I'm like not satisfied with it. Like, no, I cannot give you. No, this is just okay. This is me going in weird places now. No, of course, but it will definitely be unexpected. But now I'm excited. I hope to see him tomorrow morning.
Well, the other thing that we did on Mother's Day a few years ago, the sunflower is our theme for working mums Hong Kong. And we went into the parks on Mother's Day and we were giving out flowers to local mums. But many times there was an auntie with them and we'd say to her, "Are you a mum?" And she would be like, "Yeah." And we would give her a flower too. And again, it was just that sense of, oh, it's Mother's Day. Oh, yes, I'm a mum too. And it was just that sort of, it was, it meant a lot, but it was a really small gesture.
Yeah.
So cards or Mother's Day gifts or birthday, just small gestures. Let your auntie use her phone during the day to call her kids. You can't imagine how many employers in Hong Kong confiscate their phone. So, it's small things make a big difference.
Yeah. Thank you for all the smiles that you put on my face today.
Okay. Likewise.
Yeah.
Likewise. Really, it's always lovely chatting with you. I really appreciate your time and also support just to spread a little bit more what we do and why we think it's really important.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I'd love to see you at one of our next community calls. So reach out to me if you want to join at hello@impact.com. This is a free offering for our #Impact community, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you there. I talk to you soon. Bye.